guys, it's Kelly Latevola here, and I'm back with another video for Simon Says Stamp. And today we are going to be making two cards, which I didn't necessarily set out to make, but that's what we ended up with. And we're going to be using Suzy's Paintables. This is Mothers and Flowers. There's a lot of really great ones in here, but I'm going to use this floral background, and then also the Mom die. So these are printed on watercolor paper. I went ahead and taped down my paper to the board, and then I just picked some blues and greens, distress ink. I'm going to smush those on my Ranger craft mat and do some watercolor background. So this is the wet on wet technique, which means you put water down on your paper first, and then you pick up the wet, you get water on your brush, pick up the pigment wet, and then add that in. I really love her paintables. I think that they're just such a wonderful thing when you just want to sit down and color and you don't want to have to worry about your layout. And oftentimes I just color the images that are there and I'm happy with that, and just has a white background. But I wanted to use them a little bit differently today because they really can be whatever you want them to be, and they don't have to be pigeonholed into just that white background. So I'm just picking up that pigment and I'm adding it in. I'm not really, I guess, paying too much attention. I knew that I wanted there to be some blues. It actually ended up being more green tealish by the time I'm done with it. But I'm going to go ahead and do the first layer and then dry that down. I typically do 2 layers of painting just because I like a bolder background, and watercolors do dry back quite a bit. So you can see how much lighter that is. If you prefer a lighter background, stop here. I prefer a bolder background, so I'm going to add another layer. If you want it even bolder than mine, do it again. Like, it's watercolor paper, it's going to be able to hold up to the moisture, so you can just kind of keep playing with it. Here, I didn't do the wet on wet, I'm doing wet on dry, which means my paintbrush and the pigment is wet, but the paper is dry. And this is just going to give me some harder edges, which will create some variation in the background and make it just a little bit more interesting. I'm typically keeping the colors in the same place that I put them down the first time, since I'm just trying to intensify the color, but you certainly could put the colors in different areas and kind of layer them and get different mixes, and that would totally be okay too. This Poor Salty Ocean is beautiful, but it kind of got lost there a little bit because it is a lighter color. So I'm going to then dry the background down again one more time. And now I'm going to pick up some clean clear water. I have a pretty large paintbrush here, and I'm going to just flick water onto the background. I let that sit for about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to blot it up with a paper towel. I recommend you use a clean one, but I didn't have a clean one sitting on my desk, so I used a dirty one. It worked fine. This is another paintable from a different set, but I didn't want to waste that distress ink, and I would recommend that you don't either. So if you just spritz some water on what's already on your craft mat, then you can create a totally different watercolor background, even just with plain watercolor, and you can use it for other projects or hand lettering or what have you. So don't waste that ink, just use it up to your benefit. So here, because I did tape down my paper, I have some areas that don't have any color on it. I decided that I was going to have the flower panel only be a portion of my card. So I'm trimming off the tops and the bottoms. I still want it to be the full 5.5 inches because I am making a landscape card. And then I just picked Copics that matched the background colors and filled that in. All of the colors that I used and the products that I use are listed on the Simon Says Stamp blog, so you can check those out. But I just kind of filled in so that it looked like the watercolor continued. Now we're gonna go to the Copic coloring. This is kind of like just my go-to medium. I love Copics. I think that they are so beautiful, and I especially love them layered over watercolor. You can totally use Copics on watercolor paper. They work beautifully. They blend beautifully. So I picked a couple of blue greens for this first flower, and I'm using light flicking motions. So just the tip of my marker is touching the paper. I'm making kind of like striations along the flower petal, and just to give it some definition. I think these flowers are beautiful, just really open, but I thought that the background would just have so much more if there was some more definition in those flowers. So I'm working from my lightest color out to my darkest, and the lightest color actually was so light you almost couldn't even see it. So that one, the BG45 probably wasn't even necessary, and then later on I realized that there isn't enough contrast and I'll bring in a darker color. But I'm just doing the same thing. I'm, leaving it darker towards the center there, where that would be more inset, the petals would be more inset. But I'm also adding shading to the outside because it's going to make the flower look as if it's blooming out, as if those petals were much rounder. And it's going to give us some dimension, which is what I'm looking for. So here the whole flower is completed, and you can see comparative to the ones in the background, it really does look much more dimensional. I picked some navies for the next one. I'm going to go ahead and do this kind of like star-shaped flower, but I'm doing the same thing. Really light hand, just the tip of the marker, and flicking those up. I'm trying not to build what I refer to as a wall of color. So I don't want all of the color to be, you don't want your strokes to be the same exact length. You don't want everything to necessarily be so built up that you just have a big solid block of color, whether that's at the tip of the petal or at the base of the petal, because the pretty and the dimension and the realism is in the variation, because even flowers in real life don't have that exact starting point and exact stopping point. There is variation, and that's what makes them look beautiful. So sometimes I'm going up a little higher, and sometimes on the tops I'm coming down a little lower, but each time it's different for every petal. And at any point that you're happy with the way that it looks, because even with the lighter colors, especially on this portion of the card where it is lighter because of the yellow, you can stop. Whatever you're happy with. I went all the way out to the B99 because I like a lot of dimension. I like those bolder colors. And I just like the contrast that gives me. But you, like I said, can stop at any point. It's your project, whatever makes you happy. Yours isn't going to be less than mine or more than mine. It's going to be yours, and it should look like yours. So here is that B99, and it is a darker color, so I'm really only adding just a couple little flicks at the base and at the tips. I'm trying not to go overboard. I know me personally, I have a tendency to be heavy-handed with my darks, so I'm trying to avoid doing that. And here is where I'm comparative. This one compared to the other one looks like it just doesn't have any dimension. It looks so flat. So I picked a B39, which is not in the blue-green family, but it's going to work here to bring in more of like a cobalt color and really contrast those blue-green so that this flower has some real dimension. I used those two color combinations for all of the flowers in this card. For the centers, I just went in with a brighter yellow. On the star flower, there's a little bit more to color, so I just added just a little bit around the centers. And then I'm actually going to shade it with a BV. Yellow and purple are opposite on the color wheel, so you can kind of shade one with the other, and just to give that center portion a little bit of shading so that it stands up. And then I'm going to move on just to show you one leaf. Again, I did them all with the same colors. So here I'm moving out from the center out toward the edges. Sometimes I'm adding some dark at the edges and bringing that in. Sometimes I'm coloring in one like whole piece between the lines. Sometimes I don't. There really wasn't any rhyme or reason to it. I just wanted there to be some depth so that the leaf looks kind of like it's folded in on itself. But I didn't, again, want to build that wall of color. I wanted there to be some variation to make it a little bit more interesting. And really, by the time this thing was all said and done, it kind of reminded me of like those men's tropical shirts, like the button-down tropical shirts. But I thought that it was really pretty, and it looks completely different from the way that we started, which I love because then mine isn't going to look like anybody else's. So this large mom die, I'm going to go ahead and line that up. I'm using my Simon grid sheet in the background to make sure everything's good and lined up. I ran that through my Big Shot, and then I'm going to go ahead and take that off. These letters I ended up totally loving because it has like pieces of the flowers on it, and they just look really pretty and intricate. You can get that mom die. There's also a dad one. They come as a set, or you can buy them individually, which I love because, I could use this for my mama's birthday or any other like just hello card I want to send her. So here I have a piece of blue violet cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I hit it with my powder tool, which for me is an embossing bag. and then stamped in Versamark ink. This stamp set is actually from a new stamp set. I think it's called So Fond of You. But again, it'll be linked, and it just is the You're the Best. So I actually did 2 of them, the heat embossing 2 of them, and I trimmed one into a banner, and that one's going to go on this card. I'm adhering the colored portion of the panel to the top of my card, leaving that white section below, and then I'm also going to leave the letters white. In order to get the placement of my center correctly, I'm going to put that O back in and then fit in the middle of it so that it completes that flower. And then I'm going to add this this little banner right there underneath it in the middle. I kind of toyed around with where to put it, but this ended up being the best way. I trimmed another piece of that blue violet cardstock just very thin to put at the bottom. I really like framing things in. That's just kind of my style. I feel like the card isn't complete if it isn't. And then I'm using some white Wink of Stella. I wanted to make the notation that this one is white because it dries white. So this one I'm using on the flowers is clear, and they have 2 different colors of shimmer. Since I loved these letters oh so much, I decided, I have a mom and I have a mother-in-law, so I was going to go ahead and knock it out. 2 birds with 1 stone, right, folks? And when you're adhering letters, it's always easier to line them up if you start with the center letter, which I apparently was trying to put it down and then slid it halfway across my project. But if you adhere the one in the center, it's much easier to line up the other ones that are next to it. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere those down flat. Again, I'm going to pop up this little banner, which this one I didn't put the banner edges on. And then there's also, Simon Says Stamp has just come out with some new sequins. And so I picked the large green ones from the vintage set, and then I used the smaller greenish, I think the greenish yellow ones and the blue ones just to kind of accent that and finish off the card. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. I hope that you've seen, maybe some new ways that you can use some paintables that you own. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.